Imagine opening your email to find years of history deleted. Only a single email remains. A ransomware request for $2 million. You think to yourself, how could this happen to me? You see, there's two types of companies. Those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. The weight of responsibility comes crashing down on you. It's the sort of responsibility you feel when your family is craving a delicious pizza. You finally open the box only to find the most cringeworthy topping that you mistakenly ordered. Join Pineapple on Pizza podcast as John and George, along with guest executives, discuss the most common and craziest cybersecurity risks, followed by actionable tips and strategies that can be implemented to protect your cyber risk pie. Pineapple on Pizza is hosted by Omnistruct.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pineapple on Pizza. Today, we have an amazing guest who's part of the TV scene, helping on the series Jack Ryan. He's a leader of tactical fuel and water delivery on land and sea. He's a developer of lab-grown chicken nuggets. And on top of that, he's the CEO and owner of T.J. Clark International. Welcome to Eric Jenkusky.
Hey, John. George. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you.
So, Eric, we got to ask our main question here, which is if cyber risk was a pizza and the frameworks are the crust, what's the riskiest topping you've seen, and what topping would you equate that to?
I would say the riskiest topping, especially for a government contractor like myself, is not fully understanding CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification, and NIST 800-171. Probably sounds like I'm speaking a foreign language to some folks out there that don't know what that is. But I would say that's the ghost pepper of my pizza if I was going to equate it to a topping, because not knowing it's on your pizza before you bite into it, you're in for a rude awakening.
I've seen that ghost chip. I've never had ghost pepper chips or ghost pepper on my pizza, but definitely that ghost pepper chip or what is it called? Reaper chip, I think is what it is. But have you seen the one chip challenge?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, so there's a one chip challenge, and it's got like a whole bunch of different things on it. You can definitely look that up later. But I've seen people do it live, and they start sweating, and it's kind of fun. YouTube that might be another good thing to see.
I'll have to look into that for sure.
We have to be clear that we're not recommending that you do this. You have to sign a waiver, I think, don't you, John?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. So, yeah, for me, I'm Irish, so table pepper is a little bit too hot for me sometimes, and so therefore I don't partake, but I've definitely seen people do it. Definitely one of the riskiest things I've seen, but again, everybody get their own choice, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me, what do you see as you're a CEO and co-founder, you've done all these cool things. So what keeps you up at night, and what do you see in the industry that people are challenged with?
I think that the constant changing of these rules and regulations and the perhaps unequal application of them across, especially as a government contractor with different government agencies, and the inconsistent application of them is something that, that concerns me. A lot of companies that are out there, I think there's a lot of, especially small business, that are completely unaware. They're going to wake up not too long from now, and they're going to have bid on something, and their bid is going to be rejected because the contractor is going to go into, the contracting officer, I should say, is going to go into the PIEE system and see that, for instance, the company doesn't have a NIST 800-171 evaluation conducted of their IT systems, and they'll just be kicked out of the competition for that. So it actually happened to us, and not that we got kicked out, we were afforded the opportunity to correct it, but had no idea that was even happening. And I think other small businesses are going to be in for a rude awakening come this fall.
Most definitely. I think that the regulations and the regulatory requirements around that are definitely increasing because everybody's tired of losing data, including our government and individual privacy records. It's definitely becoming much more of a hot button for the world, and businesses that are still sticking their head in the sand and doing the ostrich thing are starting to find that may not be the best solution.
Yeah, and there's also quite frankly, there is a national security element to this. If you look at if we looked at our website stats and see where the IP addresses are that are looking at our website on a daily basis, it's from hostile countries that are hostile to the United States. And it's really important. I mean, a lot of folks don't know that the CMMC is in the NIST 800, 171, and 172 are being implemented to prevent our adversaries from securing information they shouldn't have. And it's, we just have to take reasonable steps like two-factor authentication, et cetera, to prevent them from being able to obtain that information.
So what are your biggest challenges today in meeting those regulatory requirements? Well,
like many things, at least on the government side, a lot of times the regulations are like reading Sanskrit, and it's necessary to have experts that can help you navigate those regs, what you need to do. And a lot of the government websites are, quite frankly, terribly developed, terribly produced. They're not intuitive. You really need experts to be able to help you navigate that quickly so you can meet your obligations, so you don't lose any revenue in both the short and long term because of some really minor issue that you weren't compliant with, that you didn't know was a minor issue. You don't even know the issue exists, but the experts that are out there are able to help you navigate that. So that's the biggest thing that I as these different regulations and everything are promulgated across the entire government enterprise and the contracting systems, that's what I stay up, worrying about. Are we able to, meet all of our obligations to continue to win business?
I would argue that the challenges that maybe some businesses have is they think a website is a technical endeavor, and it's really more of like an artisanship. So, and the hard part of that is that whether you're a technical or you're more of an artisan, you're going to end up with a different result on the site. But both seem to sometimes leave holes in their website presence, security gaps, security holes, that's just kind of it seems to be the norm. And so on the government side, I think some of the folks that are building those sites, I think their leaders are probably saying, "Oh, this is tech, right? This is go build a site, right?" And I don't think a lot of these IT folks have exactly gone to college to learn artisanship, more so taking computer classes and calculus 1, 2, and 3. So you have to wonder if is there really such thing as a completely secure internet presence, because you've got technical people that probably know the cybersecurity side or cyber risk side, at least to some degree. But then you have the artisans and the marketing folks, in private sector. And so perhaps maybe some of the things that we're seeing on these websites have a lot to do with, essentially the talent that's working on it. Now, do we need a new approach? Must there be a new standard in the future is what I always wonder. And with CMMC, that is designed to, you would hope that the outcome of any CMMC certification would address web presence, but that's not, as far as I know, there really isn't a very specific, set of rules aside from the supply chain management side of CMMC. If you're familiar with it, you'll know that the supply chain management, you're going to outsource a lot of that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
correct.
So, and you as a contractor yourself, right, or as a provider of services, products, what have you, I'm sure that you've run into those situations where you don't have full control over the environment that you're working in. And that the technical world is similar. So I'm curious, when it comes to those risks, do you see anything that stands out in particular with all these different hands in the cookie jar in the projects that you might be working on that concern you?
Well, I think that one of the reasons why the government is seeking to promulgate the CMMC is because, and I think a lot of small businesses or businesses in general need to understand that they're not necessarily the target. They're an end to a means by bad actors seeking to gain information from the U.S. government, and we're just a path to try to help them do that. But one of the things that I often think about is, especially since I have to use these systems, a lot of these legacy government application systems are, in some cases, 20 plus years old. Some of them are, appear to be DOS based even. And you're looking at it and you're going, so because they don't do their job to secure and update their computer systems, it's now becoming my job to protect their computer system, because I have a potential backdoor into their system through my system. And so that's why I was like, this is like, some of this is just crazy. I always think of like when you go to the airport and you see some of the airlines still using dot matrix printers. And if you've ever peeked behind the ticket counter and you see the screen, it's like DOS. It's not, it's not like a Windows application or higher. It's unbelievable. And I think of the same thing. I mean, they must single-handedly be keeping the dot matrix printer paper business alive, because I haven't used dot matrix printer in 20 years now, I think. That's what I think the big issue is, that the sheer size of the government, the cost related to them upgrading their systems is just so massive that they have to do this kind of patchwork protection, if you will, of the whole system.
When you brought up the airline industry, I'm thinking, how long has Sabre been around? If you've flown at all, you've probably heard of Sabre, right?
Yes.
I think I wonder if that, I don't know anything about Sabre. I'm not in the airline industry, but that might be an example. It may not be, who knows? But when we talk about the risks within the supply chain, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Right? So you don't necessarily, it's not necessarily the contractor situation. It's the contractor maybe working around technical debt. Let's just call it technical debt, right? Mm-hmm. So it may happen at the federal side in this particular case, but we've seen it in what we call SLED markets, state, local, and even in education, as well as the Fed side. So we get it. Sometimes there's technical debt floating around, and being asked to be secure. It really, how much does that really matter for the contractor to actually prove that they're continuously doing the right thing, right? And I think that's why we have this evolution that's happening right now, in what essentially is a buyer wanting to transfer risk, over to the seller. So is it a seller beware or buyer beware situation, as we kind of get in the normal politics of supply chains and the markets and those sorts of things? But I can imagine that the challenges are not exactly what a technical person might see as a challenge, whereas the non-technical person may not see the technical side as well. So, but it all does boil down to, so it seems, the supply chain management side of CMMC and other regulations that are similar in other industries. So I get it, and it's a good point.
So Eric, I have a question for you. So we've been talking about digital sites and everything else, but my understanding is that you're kind of an expert when it comes to building forward sites for the military and other things like that. So what's the military need those for, and what are those sites? How is that done?
So we call it expeditionary operations, and what that means is anytime you've what they call forward project power beyond the borders of the United States, that then becomes an expeditionary operation, and it can occur in places where there is fixed infrastructure and places where there's not fixed infrastructure. And we focused on the places that are not fixed infrastructure to provide basic life support services like food, water, but in particular, our company focuses on water and fuel. So I always tell people we don't build any of the cool stuff, but without our products, none of the cool stuff moves. So we're the picks and shovels. I would like to think that if Warren Buffett was going to invest in a company, that we meet his, nuts and bolts requirement, because like I say, we don't build any of the cool stuff, but without our systems, you can't fuel a helicopter, you can't fuel a truck, you can't provide water, to a soldier. And, our primary customer is the U.S. Army's Petroleum and Water Systems Office. And when you walk into their foyer and their lobby, they have a really cool mural, and it says across the top, "The United States Army's most important weapons system runs on water." And there's a photo of a U.S. soldier. And so that's why, like, water is absolutely, critical. I've been in 44 countries around the world helping the U.S. government establish a presence in those places, and and to be able to operate with our allies in different places. So that's why we need it. I mean, the operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, East Africa, Central South America, all those places, Philippines, all those places are places where the U.S. needs to have this own capability, so to speak, in-house to be able to support our troops in those particular areas.
The term, for those of you that are familiar, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Food and water is kind of important, water being the most important. But the fuel to get you from point A to point B, also critical. Perhaps the third critical part is internet connectivity. What happened if the whole internet went down? Right? It seems impractical, but it's plausible. Right, what you're doing in terms of your outcomes and delivery of what essentially is fuel and water, that could still happen, arguably, right? And so, in the field, obviously there would be some changes, but ultimately you have to go back to the old Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And I would agree, Warren Buffett would be like, yeah, I'd invest in that, there's no question. So, but what would happen if the internet went down in your case as an operative organization? What do you think? Would you still be able to deliver?
We would have to resort to old school. If the internet went down but phone was still available, we'd be able to do that. But to your point, George, there's a huge movement, a decent sized movement within the DoD community, as an example, to where they're looking at that very issue, because so many of our systems are, if you're sitting over in East Africa someplace and the internet goes down, I also say from our standpoint, there's no Home Depot to run to down the corner to get a replacement part, right? So right. You have to be creative. I mean, obviously our military ran for years before the internet. So there's probably nobody around left that knows, that is still in that operated pre-internet, maybe. But, one of the things that they're looking at is where, for instance, GPS, not having that GPS capability on your devices, et cetera, being able to transmit video. What do you do in a contested, denied environment? How do you continue to operate? How do you continue to navigate? That's I know a big issue the Navy's looking at, is being able to navigate, et cetera. If like the satellites are taken down, how do you continue to navigate? So there's a lot of technologies that are being developed utilizing other means with which to be able to, as an example, circumnavigate or to be able to communicate. Some of it is line of sight communications with radio waves, et cetera, going back old school, like literally transmitting encrypted radio waves off the internet grid, as an example. So there's a lot of things like that that you have to look for, and those contingencies are in place in a lot of parts of the world.
Unfairly, I just got back from a conference last week regarding communications for primarily U.S. first responders and those sorts of things. for those kinds of situations, whether it's a flood, a fire, or some kind of a man-made disaster that happens. So that's top of mind for me at the moment. But ultimately, that has to be a factor in these expeditionary operational situations. Especially in continent, the different continents that are out there. I mean, Africa is the one that's moving fast right now in terms of being connected to an internet delivered world. So, but that's the next frontier, is what I'm hearing. But as far as your experience, I'm sure you've had to deal with that situation as a risk scenario of losing communications, regardless of what the situation is. Generally, at least in Africa, that seems to be the place where the likelihood of instability or connectivity may be an issue and has to be considered a risk. Have you been in that situation before, where you have had no connectivity and you've had to resort to a traditional radio kind of an approach?
It's interesting you bring up Africa, because one of the things that I don't think a lot of people realize is that, and this is both a strength and a weakness, right? Here in the US, if our internet goes down and we're used to using VoIP, if we still have a landline, right, in the office, you can pick up that landline and talk over a legacy telephone wired system. In Africa, on the other hand, the supermajority of the continent jumped over that whole phase of development where they put up telephone poles across the whole continent and jumped right to cell towers. So without that legacy system to utilize as a background, interesting thing is shortwave radio, believe it or not. There's a lot of folks utilize shortwave radio as their backup to the internet, because all you have to do is have power and a radio, and then you can talk to other folks. But we ourselves were fortunate enough that we never experienced it and had satellite. I've carried satellite backup comms, so if local infrastructure like a cell tower went down, we could switch to the Iridium system and talk off the satellite.
Yeah,
that could also be contested at some point in the future too, right?
The term that was coined early on was, they called them HFNs, or hastily formed networks. Right?
Yes.
So you still need the communications capabilities, whether it be satellite or otherwise. Well, that's really, really interesting to hear your actual experiences and how you deal with the risk of availability. But I think what may be happening in the simplest term is that security issues could result in internet downtime, really, in its simplest form. But there's the other side of the coin, which is that ghost pepper topping of what essentially is CMMC in your case. I think every organization is, regardless of industry, is going to face that. At least Gartner is predicting that. I think, I'm not sure if it's Gartner, maybe Forbes. I don't remember where I saw the article off the top of my head, but which is by 2026, that cyber risk will be the primary concern, which is the business risk of being online. And that CMMC is just one of those examples of that happening, is that it's about the contract and procurement and things that you have to do to prove that you're doing the right thing, especially when nobody's watching.
And it extends well beyond just your website and your physical location, right? Now that we're such a mobile, working remote, et cetera, you have to worry about, where previously we had to worry about a single computer for each person. Now everybody has their desktop, their laptop, their tablet, their phone. All of them are connected into the organization's network. It takes a single person out to dinner, letting their kid watch a TV show and clicking on a pop-up ad that's malicious to bring the whole organization down. It could literally be that simple, that especially with the proliferation of all these bogus text messages. Say your 6-year-old kid is watching something. They see, this nice blue colored link pops up as they're watching their cartoon, pops up on your phone from a text message that's malicious, and they click it on. And now your phone is compromised, because now there's There's something running in the background and you don't even know it happened because the text message goes away. You get the phone back from your 6-year-old, and the next thing you know, all of a sudden, everybody in the company is getting email messages from you asking you to send them $500 because you're stuck in London. You know, and it's literally that crazy that you can be compromised. And I also worry about the ability to buy stuff online through, Instagram or, wherever, where you have all these ads popping up. You don't know where those companies are domiciled. And if they're domiciled in China, but they make it look like they're in California or New York, and the next thing you know, you just downloaded an app or whatever, and everything on your phone is now theirs.
Yeah.
I don't think people have become, just people in general, become far too complacent of sharing their information.
Gotcha. Well, in terms of sharing information, where do you go events-wise to learn more about how to do a better job at what you're doing, or to learn more about cyber risk or CMMC? So you take it whatever direction you like there.
Well, we're members of the National Defense Industrial Association, NDIA, and there's a committee. There's a committee and a whole committee on CMMC, and we get regular emails and updates from them. We also follow the government's CIO website in particular to see the CMMC section, because they're working on 2.0 and 3.0 now, and trying to as they meld the NIST 800, 171, and 172 into the CMMC, and there's all these updates going on. We pay attention. We pay attention to all those things. We're lucky in that, in being a small business, we don't have a server. We don't use Google Drive for because Google Drive, believe it or not, most people don't know, is not CMMC compliant. It's not. You have to pay for a much higher. Your just standard Google corporate company Google Drive will not get you past the certification. Will not get you past so a lot of people use stuff like that, but you have to have a secure capability of transferring classified controlled unclassified information, and a lot of folks don't even know that.
Yeah, I always found that surprising because Google's is actually FedRAMP authorized, like their entire work-based scenario is FedRAMP authorized, but when it comes to the CMMC side, it's GCC high in the Microsoft environment. But that's a whole nother
right. It's a whole nother
podcast. So, but thanks for sharing the events. I as well as the site that you go to is, I do wonder about, what are the right events to go to? It just seems like that the answer is always tied to industry. So your connections and being members of MDIA and those sorts of situations in business seems like it's mandatory to, at least for every business. Sure, there's some trade show or an event for just about everything. In fact, while I was in Las Vegas last week, there was the International Pizza Expo. And I got to tell you, out of all the foods that are out there, right, what an appropriate place for me to have been with a Pineapple on Pizza podcast. And so I think about those associations, and aside from events, and the one of the things that I learned, that there's actually a professional writer on pizza that these guys were talking about. There's like a blogger, there's like a pizza, there's like any industry, right? And so I think about that, and I was like, it's the same way in our industry. You're going to find certain writers that you look for. And I'm curious, in what you do, are there writers or books that you follow or that you recommend when it comes to what it is that you do?
In terms of our IT, our cybersecurity, or just in our
business?
Industry? I basically follow all of the leading defense reporters. There's from the different organization, from Defense News to Bloomberg has a government section. there's a company called Tactical Media, and they out of the greater DC area that has a number of different publications that follow our particular part of the Department of Defense enterprise, and that's who I basically follow. There's really not a particular writer or author that writes on, but you just gave me an idea that maybe I need to become that guy.
And there you go.
I think you've gotten something on that one, and the closest thing.
Start an Expeditionary Ops podcast.
There you go. I don't think it's been done, and I would suggest there's a lot of room out there for new podcasts. But the one I know, there's one writer in particular that I enjoyed reading, a book called "Turn the Ship Around" by David Marquette. Mm-hmm. So I think I've got the author's name right, but it's kind of a real simple summarized bullet point version. Is he was an officer that was going to take charge of a submarine, captaincy, so to speak, and like a month before he was supposed to be assigned, because he'd been trained up for a year on a specific vessel. A month before his assignment, they changed and put him in charge of a vessel he had no training, he knew nothing about. Right, which just doesn't happen, right? And so it's a story about how he was able to become a great leader and basically turn the ship around, so to speak. Apparently, this particular submarine had the worst re-enlistment rate, which is how they measure whether or not that vessel and its captain is successful. And he did it. And so so there's some great leadership, suggestions and what he did. And that's the only book I can think of off the top of my head that you might get some value out of. But I don't think there's enough of them, right? Either that or I'm looking in the wrong spot. Right?
You don't happen to remember what sub that was, do you? By chance?
I don't remember. No, I don't. I wish I did, but I don't remember.
Well, I'm going to look it up, because I don't. One of the things that I don't know if I had, if you all knew, is I sit on the U.S. Navy's Anchor Scholarship Foundation board, and what that foundation does is we provide scholarships to the dependents and spouses of our sailors, because the sailors get the GI Bill, but their dependents and spouses don't, unless the sailor assigns that to them. But if you're getting your own education, then you obviously can't do that. And in the Navy, one of the operational doctrines of the Navy is that operational readiness starts at the home, and you can't have a sailor being on a ship for 9 months or in a sub worrying about whether or not how they're going to pay for their kids' college tuition. So that's one of the reasons why we exist. So I was just curious, because I do serve on the board with a number of retired officers and admirals, and I was like, who knows, maybe
well, it's very popular. It's a very popular series. I mean, there's a workbook for it now, and
really?
Marquette goes around and speaks to CEOs all over the country. So
I'll have to look that up, definitely.
Yeah. So it's not one of those like he's well known for that for authoring that book. So maybe I'll be talking about Eric Jenkusky and this amazing book that he wrote on whatever the topic it is that you decide. I'm excited for that for you. If it comes around, I'll be the first one to.
I have two different books in mind that I'm been toying with, and I've spoken to for lack of a better term, ghost author with me. So we're looking. I'm definitely looking at doing that in the not too distant future.
Yeah, a future plan. Yeah. So, what does excite you about the future? Since we're talking about the future,
I mean, I was raised to be an optimist. I'm a glass half full person. Always have been. And I also believe that you don't predict the future; you go and create it. And because of that mindset, I've never. Yeah, are there things going on in the world that give me pause? Yes, but I'm an optimist. So I believe in the capability and the power of humans to overcome the challenges that we have that we have, in this world. And, every day being a techie, being a tech kind of guy, and I'm just talking about tech across the board, as you can, see from my resume, I haven't pigeonholed myself into a single thing, although the expeditionary ops is something that I'm very passionate about. I love looking at new technologies, and I have a VC firm that I work with from time to time that we share ideas of research that's coming out of the different universities, and how you could license that research to be able to create products that solve human problems we have here on the planet. So I'm what I am most optimistic about, I guess, would be the fact that there are so many people on this planet working really hard to solve some of these challenges, and I think that they're coming at them from different directions. So a lot of them, everything from climate change to food security, all those challenges can be and will be met in the not too distant future. We always seem to rise to the occasion, I think.
Well, thank you, Eric. So let me ask you this: how does somebody become Eric? I mean, what journey did you go through to get there? I mean, did you did school and work, and I mean, what? How'd you get this? How'd you get this education and knowledge?
There was the crazy thing is, I get to ask this question a lot from time to time, and there was really no grand plan. It just kind of happened. I had a buddy way back when still in college, who was a couple of years older. And he said to me, "Eric, you're only on this train ride once. You can't miss your stops." I think one of the issues that most people are want to have structure. They want to have certainty. I think those of us that embrace uncertainty and embrace, like, literally, a lot of people have this mantra and they talk about it on all these different podcasts, and they talk about it in these on these Instagram and posts and Twitter posts. But I really do believe that if you are willing to slow down and enjoy the journey, you get to see the opportunities that are before you. But if you create this, well, I have to be here at this age and I have to do that at that age, you create your own noise and you miss out on the opportunities that life and the world presents to you. I've always had the mindset that if somebody invites me to go do something in a place that I've never been to before, I accept it without hesitation, even if it's something that I know nothing about and don't care about, because I think that's how you grow and expand. And a lot of times in my life, I have been able to solve problems based upon some of the unique experiences that I had, that if I was like, no, I got to work my 9-to-5 job and I got to do, because I have to have a house at this age and I need to be married with this many kids by this age, and listen, people do that and that's fine. I'm not slamming it. It's, I'm not right. They're not wrong. It's just, we're just different. But I think that, to be an entrepreneur, I just saw that study about that entrepreneurs have have all these mental health conditions. And, but I think that in order to be able to navigate what entrepreneurs and business owners need to navigate, you need to have a pretty open mind, and you need to be willing to do new things and try new things.
Oh yeah, I agree. And that's both in business and in personal. Right? Mm-hmm. So what are your interests outside work? Outside of the working?
I do a lot of like to hike. I'm an outdoorsman. So I like to hike. I like to go camping this weekend, actually. And I tent camp. I don't like, trailer camp. So, but I literally tent camp. It's going to be 32 degrees at night. So it'll be night, good sleeping, good sleeping weather. We'll be able to, like doing that. Love traveling, love food, like bourbon. So that's pretty much, I do an enormous amount of reading. I think that's I remember when I was in college, I took this career development class ahead of, and one of the things that the instructor said during that class was the average college graduate after college doesn't even read one book a year. That like stuck with me. I mean, you see, I got a stack of books here. I'm constantly, constantly reading, and I still like to do the old school thing. I like to read an actual physical book, not read it on a tablet. Although sometimes when I'm traveling, I will download on the tablet just for not having to carry 50 pounds of books around with me. But I think reading is really important. I have a morning routine of I read our local Axios news here in Columbus. I read the BBC and I read Bloomberg every morning.
Wow, I'm almost identical.
Well, they have their newsletters and they're all quick reads. I take 15 to 20 minutes in the morning to understand what's going on locally and understand what's going on in the U.S. because the U.S. news does a terrible job of reporting on the whole rest of the world. I mean, we're so and listen, I'm as pro-American as they come, but I also think that we are so America-centric that we ignore really important things going on in the rest of the world that the U.S. news picks up on like a week later that can really affect, what we need to be able to do as business leaders here in the U.S.
I think the best way to describe something like that, for me at least, is that, there's a reason why with the old adage of, put your ear down to the rail to see what so you can hear the train coming, right? Mm-hmm. And globally, you have to do that now. And the best way to do that is to find, other resources on news and reporting. And I too, BBC Bloomberg, it's like talking to myself to some degree. Yeah, so I read every morning. Of course, I do look at other kinds of news, personally. Like I keep track of what's going on in certain sports and outdoor activities as well. I would argue that John and I grew up in a campground. We grew up in the Sierra Nevadas. Mm-hmm. So people used to come to our town to camp. Just a little odd. So it's like, but this is my house, and there's people camping in my property, right?
Call it our backyard.
Yeah, literally, right?
Exactly. So so definitely a tent camper as well. So that's yeah. If you bring an RV, we make fun of you.
Yeah, I grew up in the Catskills in upstate New York.
Oh yeah, there you
go. And I graduated high school with 30 people. And, from a public high school where some of the folks were on the bus for well over an hour every morning coming from up in the hollows, where the county I grew up in is the northernmost. Most people don't equate New York with what I'm about to say. It's the northernmost county in the Appalachian Regional Commission. Yeah. And it's not the Sierra Nevadas, and I wish, I'm jealous. I'm not going to lie, but it was still really mountainous. We had bear. You saw bear. You saw deer, and we had the East Branch of the Delaware River running right through the middle of town, and so it was. I loved and same like you. Everybody from New York City came to where we lived to camp.
Camping is an interesting proposition right now in our neck of the woods because most people go camping. And the bear issue, I'll put it in the bear box. Well, the bear box is 55 feet under snow right now. So if you don't know how to hang the food, right, or your supplies up in a tree, then you're going to have some issues. But anyway, you know what? Where can people really appreciate you opening up and, on a little bit more information about what you love to do. And I'll tell you what, if there's ever an opportunity to go camping, I think that's one area that for you, if you ever come out to the West Coast for any reason, I'll give you some pointers. So definitely
absolutely. We'd definitely take you out.
Yeah. So where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter. I'm on, it's my actual name, Eric Jenkusky. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. So that's where, you can find me and you can see some of my exploits on those different social media venues. That's where I lurk about. Right now, I've been so heads down on a couple of DoD projects that haven't been posting as much as I would like, but hope to get through a couple of things that we're working on right now, so I can start being more proactive.
Fantastic. And so for our listeners, if you want to go to his Eric's company website, TJ Clark International, it is TJ and then ClarkINTL.com. You can check out his website. And you also have a phone number posted on your website. I assume that number is still a good way to get a hold of you. That's at 614-388-8869. So folks, for our listeners, feel free to reach out to Eric. Especially if you are a DoD subcontractor or related to a space. So, and we really appreciate you taking the time that you spent with us today, Eric.
No problem. My pleasure.
I'm sure that there's you have a LinkedIn profile here, I see as well.
Yes.
You need to have your specific information and connect with you on LinkedIn that our listeners need to be aware of.
No, people. Well, if they have the InMail or whatever, they can send me send me a connect and mention that, hey, heard you on the Pineapple on Pizza Omnistruct podcast, and I will normally I connect with most people.
We'll also include those links here in the information. So
absolutely,
no problem. All right. Well, Eric, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. Very informational and looking forward. Glad you're there. Creating those bases out in the forward bases for us with the water and fuel. There's probably some places in the desert that we could definitely use that here around me. So in our audience, thank you for listening and hope you've learned something or laughed. And if you have, please tell somebody about this and pass this on. Again, Eric, thank you. We appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks, John. Thanks, George. Thanks for having me.
There it is. It's been another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza with your hosts, John and George. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you all for joining another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza. You can find show notes, links, and resources by visiting omnistruct.com/blog. And a huge thank you to all who are preventatively protecting organizations from cyber threats.